you, Wendy. Okay, this is James Allison. I'm calling to order the Thursday, August 18th, 2022 format meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Let's go ahead and call the boards to order, starting in the east with SDIC.
Thanks, James. Calling SDIC to order. Roll call vote. Annalise?
Present.
Can?
Present.
And Tom Hansel is present. We have quorum.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, SDIC. Let's go with MCDD.
All right, calling MCDD to order, roll call votes. Nikki.
Jill's present.
Kenzie.
Present.
Corky.
Here.
And have I missed anyone?
Nancy's just coming on.
Nancy. Okay, I knew she's going to be potentially a few minutes late. And we have quorum, and Nancy can join when she's on.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, MCDD. Pen 2.
This is Val Humble calling Pen 2 to order. Val Humble is present. Karen Myers.
Karen Myers present.
Ray Helen Kincaid.
Present.
Kathy Cullen.
Present.
And Eric Molander. Present. All are present and accounted for. Pen 2 is in order.
Great. Thank you.
And minutes are being kept electronically. The recording.
Great. Thank you, Val. Thank you, Pen 2. It's James Allison calling Pen 1 to order. Claudio Campuzano.
Present.
PJ Christopher.
Present.
Annalisa Kohler.
Present.
Jeff Noodleman.
Present.
And this is James Allison. Pen 1 is called to order with a full house and quorum. And thank you everyone for being here today. We'll move on to item B, public testimony. Do we have any public testimony today? Okay, with no public testimony, we will move on to item C, the Business Oregon Grant Update with Evan Mitchell.
James, if I may make one brief announcement before we dive into that, it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce to the boards our new Director of Finance and Administration, Lori Baker, who I know is on the call. Lori, I didn't warn you I was going to do this, but I'm hoping you might take a second to introduce yourself. And for those of you who have been following along at home, Lori replaces the great work of Keith Hobson, who joined us on an interim basis. And we're very fortunate to have Lori. She has a lot of experience working in special districts across Greater Portland and brings a really great grounded approach to helping us complete all the important financial and administrative work we need to do to be successful. Lori, do you want to say anything?
Thank you, Jim. So yes, I'm happy to be here on day 4 and join all of you and get to see names put to faces. So it's great to meet all of you, and I hope that I get an opportunity to spend some one-on-one time so that you can get to know me and my background. I spent about 6 years in public accounting, so I was an auditor, which is, you know, on the other side of the table, so kind of understand their approach. When I first came out of college, moved to Portland I'm a native Oregonian, moved from Eugene to Portland in 1988. So I've been here longer than I was there. So I guess this is my home at that point. Spent about 10 years at TriMet. So I've got some good background in capital construction, bond issuance, grant accounting and grant compliance. Had also spent some time with Keith Hobson at Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District. So he and I have a good connection, and I tease him that I have a direct line to his personal cell, so I can always ask questions if there's something I come across that I don't know. So great to get a chance to meet all of you, and I look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Lori. That's a great introduction. We look forward to working with you. And thanks to Jim and the staff for making this recruitment and bringing Lori on board. Nancy may be reading my mind. It looks like Nancy Hendrickson has her hand up.
Yeah, I would also like to do an introduction today. So as you all know, I sit on the on the MCGD board, and I'm a member, employee of BES at the City of Portland. And now that I also sit on the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Board, I am sharing the joy at the City of Portland and bringing on Darian Santner, who's here today, to replace me on the MCDD board. Won't happen today, should happen by next meeting in September, but Darian's here to learn and also to introduce himself. I'm going to give a pre-introduction, which is that Darian has been at the city for over 20 years. He has a lot of experience in operational work, in negotiating, and it's a nice confluence of understanding work on the ground, as well as understanding larger issues and different agendas. So Darian, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thanks, Nancy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I guess as far as background, yeah, I've been a Portlander all my life. I've worked in the public agencies managing water and environmental issues, well, BES, for quite a few years. I've worked with many of you on this call in one capacity or another, and I've worked a lot in the Columbia Slough watershed on the ground projects and putting together and executing partnerships with private landowners and other agencies and kind of all parts of those types of projects. So I'm happy to be involved here and help out if I can. Hey, Jim.
Full disclosure, I worked at BES with Darian years ago and have been a fan ever since.
Great, thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Darian. I will give just my 2 cents on Darian, and just because I think it's important for this group to know. I worked with Darian for at least those 20 years, and one thing that he really brings to the table is Darian has traveled many of the miles in this district. He has worked in the area and very committed to public infrastructure, environmental quality, and definitely to the community. And so it's really a pleasure to bring Darian on board, because he kind of fits that. We're not all cast from the same mold, but I think one thing that's consistent in everybody on this call is that desire to be knowledgeable and that commitment to place and people. So Darian, I'm so glad you're here to join this team. Let us know how we can make this enterprise, if you will, more transparent and more helpful to you as you get onboarded. Okay, and with that, we are
James,
still.
Could I just say one quick thing? From a neighborhood point of view, Darian was the one person that was able to move things to blue heron wetlands and invasive species. And we'd gone round and round, and he came in and was very helpful. So from a neighborhood standpoint, he gets great kudos. And you mentioned that name and then say, can you go get that Darian guy to fix this? So I really am glad to see his name and his ability to participate, because it'll add a lot to our work.
Great. Thank you, Mary Helen. Okay, I think we are now finally ready, and we're still basically on time. That's a good thing. For item C, the Business Oregon Grant Update with Evan.
Yeah, hi, Evan Mitchell, Public Affairs and Communications for the districts. Well, we have some really exciting news. The state of Oregon, just a couple weeks ago, Colin presented to them, and they approved our request for funding for the pre-construction engineering and design phase of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project. And so we don't have grant agreements yet, but we'll get those in the next probably 6 to 8 weeks, and be bringing them forward for the boards to approve sometime this fall. And that really, with that final pledge confirmed, we are in fabulous shape for getting the first couple of years of PED of the design phase of the project funded. We are, so we've got the state level funding. You all put funding in your budgets, where we were able to get contributions for the first 2 years of PED. And then the other last piece that we're working on is the federal funding. And that is, I should be cautious, but basically squared away. We're in for at least year one of PED, of the design phase. We are in both the House and Senate appropriations bills, which usually is a very, very, very good sign that it will get carried forward into the final bill. We won't know for sure until probably late December or possibly as late as March, depending on who you ask. But it's definitely, we're in really good shape. The other great news is that we're in the Water Resources and Development Act, which will authorize the project to move forward. We're waiting on that bill to sort of be wrapped up, but we were in both the House and Senate version. So again, really good pathway. So things are looking really good for us to be able to move forward with the core beginning sometime in the next fiscal year, our current fiscal year, the next federal fiscal year. And yeah, thank you everybody. All the support and discussion really helped us figure out how to piece all of this together. So very exciting. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Evan. Any questions or comments for Evan? Great, I'll just say a big thank you. I know that none of this is inked yet, but when it comes to applying for the state grant and the various legislative activities at the federal and state level, you really make something that's kind of a black box work something like clockwork. So kudos to you and the team. Thank you. Okay, let's move on then to item D, the fixed billing proposal. Ben?
So I'm going to just do a quick intro here. First, I think it's important for the boards to recall that in June, when staff first presented this to you all, we acknowledged that there is an ongoing subsidy being provided to Penn 1, Penn 2, and SDIC by the landowners of MCDD. By most normal cost allocation methodologies used in the public sector, that subsidy totals approximately $500,000 a year. We made some changes in the adopted budget that you all approved to make some improvements in the level of that subsidy to reduce it and to true up some of the accounting that we do for that cost basis, including making sure that the costs of paid time off for our operations team were incorporated into our cost basis and so on. The proposal before you today is to switch from a time and materials billing for regular maintenance to a flat fee. I want to stress to you that that flat fee is based on a 5-year basis, so it's fairly consistent over time. That flat fee will make a net reduction in the ongoing subsidy MCDD is providing to the other districts of approximately $60,000 a year, which equates to about $20,000 to each of the legacy districts, with the exception of Penn 1, $20,000 is well within your capabilities based on your reserves. I also want to say that this does remove some of the granularity that the boards are accustomed to when it comes to tracking costs. That presents some risks to the board, and there are some rational questions being asked by some of you about more details and so on. I honor those questions, and I hope we have a thorough discussion today. But I also want to remind you that when we first proposed this, we said this is good government. This is a good way to make best use of landowner resources and efficient use of your staff. So if you don't want to do it, it's okay. I want to stress that. But I also warned you that if we debate this for too long, it's not worth doing. So I just want to caution you that we're talking probably about a net $60,000 change. We are talking about a significant improvement in your staff's lives to be able to focus on the things that we're good at and that we're most effective at and that provide actual value to the landowners. So with that, I want to turn it over to Ben. And I also want to stress one last thing, that this still preserves the board's right to make changes in the future. You all are the governing bodies of these entities. If you don't like the proposed budgets, you don't have to approve them. So you maintain control. What your staff is proposing to you, I believe, is good government. Every day I wake up looking for the best ways to advance our mission and keep people safe and make good use of the resources we have available to us. And it is my recommendation to you that spending this money on the time and cost accounting is not an effective use of money for the remaining 2 or 3 years of the Legacy District's existence. So I hope you'll keep that in mind as Ben describes this proposal. And again, we will follow the board's direction, but I urge you to make a decision quickly because the cost of debating this is probably greater than the benefits that will accrue to the landowners. And that the basis of this proposal, once again, is to make good use of landowner money and to be effective and efficient in maintaining the safety of the community behind the levees. Thank you. Ben?
Thank you, Jim. What I have for the board today is I've tried to boil this down. I just have 2 slides for you. You will find these statements that I have for you on this first slide in the cover memo that we provided you in your packet. So these statements are in there. I've just replicated them here just for simplicity's sake. As Jim mentioned, our current process creates gaps in our cost recovery, that subsidy. As Jim mentioned, that subsidy will continue with this proposal. Our main objective, as Jim mentioned, is to really simplify our internal process and reduce the staff time dedicated to this cost recovery, this monthly billings that we're currently doing. That's our main objective. For 2023, our proposal is to only charge each of the districts the adopted budget line item amounts that that you all adopted in your fiscal year 22-23 budgets. That's 2 line items. That's the MCDD admin line item and the system maintenance line item. And I have those prepared to show you today. In addition to that, as we have done historically, all project service fees will remain on a time and materials basis. So if there's a special project residing in your district, we will charge any MCDD time to those projects as we have always done. We've included in your packet some IGA statement clarification to align better with our current practices for scoping projects rather than billing through service fees. The next slide that I have for you are just key statements from that proposed IGA amendment. So again, these are statements included in your packet. They're included in the IGA amendments. I've just included them here for simplicity. The amendment states that each district will pay MCD a fixed annual fee. In 2023, that fixed fee will be the adopted budget line item amounts that I mentioned, maintenance and admin. Beginning in 2023, however, that will become a calculated amount based on the actual billings for each district from MCDD from fiscal years 2018 to 2022. We don't have the final numbers for 2022, so we can provide exactly what that will be for the 2024 budget when we get to that point, so in the near future. That calculation is a trend line of actual billings over those 5 years. The fixed billing process will become effective July 1, 2022. As Jim mentioned, this change will save a tremendous amount of staff time internally if we transition to fixed billing. We would appreciate that, and we're looking forward to that if the boards agree to make this transition. So I just want to be really clear that notwithstanding the fixed billing amounts that we have done historically for all items outside of routine maintenance, for any project work, whether that is non-capital or capital, we will continue to track and bill that as special projects. And we will bill that for as time and materials. In addition to that, just in case anybody needs a reminder, we presented this slide to differentiate between what is classified as routine and what is classified as items that will be scoped as projects. We included this in our presentation in July. So as a reminder, the IGA, the proposed IGA language reflects this summarized matrix of what will be included as routine maintenance versus scoped as a special project. With that, we just have a really brief comparison of, again, I apologize, we don't have our final numbers for 2022, but you can see from our actual billings in 2021 to our proposed budget or adopted budget in 2023, there is not a significant increase or difference in any of the district billings as proposed. And with that, I'm happy to take questions. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ben. Jeff?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Ben. This may or may not be beyond your presentation, so I appreciate what you did here. Talking about the appendices, I know you referenced Appendix A about the scope of the projects. Now, I apologize if I'm jumping ahead. The sample IGA and the amendments more specifically reference an Appendix B that has a schedule of fees, okay? And the Appendix B is not attached to the amendment, but I went back and looked in the bigger packet, the 44-page document, and the Appendix B is there, the rate schedule, but it lists the 08, 09, and 09, 10 rates. So I'm curious where we are now and what those numbers really are, and if that's going to be the attachment to the amendment.
Really good question. And if Hong's on the line, I'd like to give Hong an opportunity to answer as well. We have additional amendments since that 2009 version. The most recent amendment was Amendment 13. It was approved and adopted by the boards in June. And it has an updated schedule of those hourly rates and fees. So I apologize if that, for any reason, is confusing or wasn't included when it was supposed to.
And I'll just jump in and say I'm happy to share that. So our finance staff is just reminding us all that annually you adopt those rates, and so in June you adopted Amendment 13 to the IGAs, and that has the updated rates as schedule as attachment B.
That's correct. Thank you, Wendy.
And I'm happy if we need them right now, I can email those out. Let me know.
I guess the question, it begs the question then, if we're going to be asked to vote on Amendment 14, right? And it makes reference to Appendix B, I don't know how anybody could vote for the amendment if it doesn't have the appendix attached. I guess that's my question.
Hong is out today, so I don't want to speak for her. We could update that. And again, it's the same as the rates that the board adopted in June would be the basis. So if you want to see that now, we could obviously attach it at the end, but if it's a requirement that you see that before you vote, we can provide that. I want to remind you that every hour we spend working on this diminishes the value of its impact.
Well,
but I also respect the board's desire for good information.
Isn't that good government, as you are professing? I mean,
Absolutely.
how can you expect your staff and or board members who are charged as stakeholders, et cetera, to vote on a piece of paper that is admittedly not complete,
I
right?
hear you. I hear you. Thank you.
So I guess before moving on to Eric's question, I see a comment from Kathy, but why don't we put a pin in, excuse me, a pin in Jeff's question or comment so that by the end we have a course of action for what we need for review and potentially a motion and a vote. Unless someone objects to that, I think let's go ahead and hear from everyone. We do have a concern on the table. Eric?
Ben, would you do me a favor and tell me what the escalation clause will be for 2024 and 2025?
Just had to unmute myself. Yeah, so our preliminary calculations, and please understand that when we first forecasted this, we were using a different set of numbers from 2017 to 2021 because that was the data that we had available to us at the time. So when we used that data set, the annual escalation for each district is between 7 and 9% per year. And again, that is based on our actual billings for services rendered in each district over the 5 years from 2017 to 2021.
So what is the future amount?
So the future amount, and I do appreciate this question for everybody involved. The proposed IGA language states that going forward, we would calculate the fixed billing amount based on actual billings from 2018 to 2022. And the reason we don't have those numbers for you today is we don't have our final numbers for 2022. And once we have those final numbers, we will be able to tell you, forecast what the trend line would show as proposed fixed billing amount for each district going forward for the next couple of years.
Do you expect that it will change by more than 25 basis points?
No,
From
I don't.
7.25 to 9.25 or less, correct?
Yeah, my suspicion is that it will not be significantly different from our initial data set.
And thinking about our ability to monitor this spending, when we look at the financial statements for Pen 2, it's on page 38 of 45. Where does this billing show up?
So let me scroll there quickly. So when we look at your financial statements and we look at your maintenance costs, they are going to land where it's it should be your line 7 as identified. Now for you on your sheet, it's line number 9 on your financial report, Eric, where it says total levy and drainage system maintenance. That is the line item for maintenance costs. And again, that's a total. So there's specific detailed line items that are collapsed to create that total.
But that would be the way that we would monitor that, correct? Is there anything else in line 9 that makes a material difference?
There is nothing in there in addition to that makes a material difference. There, oh yeah, because equipment and ground maintenance is actually a separate line item.
Okay. And then for the administrative expense, that would be, I'm assuming, in total contracts and agreement?
That's absolutely correct, yes.
And is there anything else in that total contract and agreement?
There are other items in that subtotal. The majority of that, for example, Penn 2's contribution to JCA is also in that subtotal.
Okay, so we would, in order to monitor this correctly, we would have to have additional detail, correct?
When we talk about the MCD admin fee, there's really no additional detail, even in the line items there, unfortunately.
But it does include the JCA fee.
Yeah, let me clarify a little bit. So in that subtotal that you're seeing on the financial report that's included in your packet, you're seeing a subtotal of both of those things. The MCDD admin fee is separate, so it would be broken out. If we provided a detailed line item report, you would see those two line items separated, and so you could always see the MCDD admin fee, independent of anything else.
So have you calculated what the anticipated spending would be for Penn 2 or Penn 1 or SDIC for 2024, 2025?
We have, like I mentioned, I'll mention two things. We did our initial preliminary forecast, again, using 5 years of history of actual billings from 17 to 21. So we do have those numbers. And I would also like to reiterate one thing that Jim said. MCDD, as we've calculated, is currently subsidizing these services to the other districts to the tune of $500,000, and that subsidy will continue. Even after we adopt this fixed fee proposal, if we adopt this fixed fee proposal, that subsidy will continue.
Right. And as Keith said in our meeting, it was that he felt that it was about one management year of time that was spread over many, many people. So probably the savings to MCDD is what, $150,000 including benefits?
At least, yes.
Okay. When will the actuals be known, and how are you going to tell us what that's going to be so we can do our financial forecasting?
I suspect, and Lori or Janet, if you want to weigh in, but I suspect that we should have our financials and we should be able to come back to you in September or October.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I want to kind of get through I want to be mindful of time, but this is an important discussion. I want to get through all of the questions and comments. Nancy?
I think Val was next.
Sorry, Eric disappeared from my screen. Val, go ahead. Sorry about that.
The previous projection based on the trend line seems to me ended up with a lesser allotment to Penn 2. I'm just remembering this, but it seems to me that we had an anomalously high billing one year that was in some sense corrected in the projection. With this change to budgeted, I guess that goes away, and we're now, as it were, projecting that anomalous year included in what we're going to expect to pay in the future. Is that a fair analysis of what's happening here?
That would be fair. From time to time, there are previously with our district billings, there have been one-time maintenance projects that were included in that fee. Going forward, we want to ensure that we scope those out as separate projects. And Val, you are correct that if there is an anomalous year, it is possible that that would be included in our data set. That would be included in that trend line forecast going forward.
But just to butt in here, as we've discussed, I think if there was a huge anomaly, it would be my commitment to these boards that we would come back to you if the methodology was in some way troubled. Again, we would have pretty good notice that something weird had happened, and we would come to you with that, or you could request that we did, or any of the boards could.
The thing that stood out to me is that I don't remember from the previous presentations that Pen 2 was going up more than the others, and I noticed in this presentation that the other two assessments go down and Pen 2 goes up. It seems to me a significant amount, and that anomaly it gives me a little heartburn.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, I think that number had a special project included in it for the current year budget.
I believe you're right. For Pen 2 specifically, your proposed 2022-23 does have a one-time project included in that mix.
So does that become?
Is that the Bridgeton levee repair? Just so we know what we're talking about.
For that was included in 2022 budget. That it's not included in these numbers for 2023. I think it's a different project. I believe for Pen 2, that is the 13th Avenue dredging. So it's under the ditch maintenance.
But that does become part of the basis from which we get a percentage increase thereafter.
Potentially, but we could also make sure that we remove those.
I would think that should be done.
That's fair.
I think I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Val. Nancy?
Thanks. So I think we have been talking about this concept for a little while. I hear your concerns in Pen 2 about maybe there's a bump that shouldn't be there, and I do trust that the staff can take care of that. I'm really, really persuaded by that this will streamline an internal financial process, which means that we either save money or can actually do some other work that really is very, very important, and is still true to the relative costs of each district. The one thing it's still not true to is it's still a subsidy. That's, and as an MCD board member, I am a little concerned. I think we all should be, but I think we are working as one system. So I guess there's a risk to the other three boards that they won't have as much granularity anymore, even though I think it's going to be smoothed out and it should be fair. And there's a risk to MCDD that we're really not capturing the subsidy and actually truing things up. So to me, that's an okay trade-off. I'm not sure how I feel about it if we don't streamline things and we still keep a subsidy. I think that starts another conversation. So I just like to point out the overall, like as a board member, I think some details are really important and I get into them just like everybody else. But the overall purpose of this is to really streamline our financial processes, while still trying to be fair. So that's my contribution to this conversation. And I think that regarding your comment, Jeff, Kathy Kellen had a important, like, connecting the dots proposal that maybe we could solve that in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Mary Helen?
Sorry, I was being challenged with my mute button. I have said this numerous times. I'm not an accountant, and a lot of this is above my head. And so I trust the people that are wiser than I am. But my question is, and Nancy, your explanation helped a lot from various views of how you serve the districts. But my question is, and I understand the urgency to get this done, and I trust the staff and Jim and everybody that put all the time into this. You still have to track time. And so how does this streamline tracking time, regardless of how it gets tracked? And another piece of that is, I don't have the slide in front of me, or I didn't print out all the packet, but let's just say Pen 2's fixed amount of billing is, I don't remember what it was, $200,000. I'm going to make that up. But what if all those services aren't utilized and there's only 180,000, or will it always just be billed at 200,000 and we won't know, or there won't be accounting for the individual actions that added up to that? So if I'm supposed to be responsible for the best use of the landowner's money, I need to believe how you will track the time like you do now on services. Like, we did this for 10,000, we did this for 80,000, as opposed to we're billing you $200,000 and we're going to provide maintenance. So if somebody can just explain that little piece, that would help, because if the service fees are going to remain on an actual billing amount, how do we track what that actual billing amount is? Because of the discussion that you had with Eric about line 7, line 9, all of those things becomes someone with far more skills than I have. And so if somebody could say, we did X amount of services and we maintained the ditches and it cost this amount of money, or it's going to cost you more money because of this, and you put it in as special projects. And I don't know if my question was clear, but it's kind of like, I need to know what I'm voting on. I'm voting on the best possible way to use the landowner's money, but I can't explain what that is if I say we're paying $200,000, but I don't know what it's for, if you're not tracking those in a way that I can say this is how, or if those services aren't used, do we get credit? So
before hearing from the staff, thank you, Mary Helen. I just want to point out we're at time for this agenda item. Unless someone objects, I think we need to continue. I'd like to hear from everyone so that we find a path forward, whether that's voting today or understanding what we need to do the good work we need to do going forward. So I just want to hear from everyone. Is that okay? Great, thank you. Tom.
Yeah, thanks, James. So I hear the term subsidy, SDIC, and I don't think the other two districts, I don't think we've ever asked for a subsidy. So how you use that term, I take it, it's like, I haven't asked, SDIC has not asked for a subsidy. So that's really an MCDD decision, policy action, how they calculate their rates. So I can't own that, so we have, SDIC has a budget, MCD has a budget. We have an intergovernmental relationship. And so as we look through and we just amended our relationship with the budget adoption. So, and I'm also hearing we need to move fast on this decision. So I'm just saying, I think we need to tap the brakes. There's a lot of dialogue going on here. You know, SDIC, I tried to get a meeting together, just given time, limited time, and just having received the draft, we weren't able to meet. So Tanny's out of the state. So I think we haven't had a good discussion at SDIC. The format is a very efficient format for these bigger topics, but the granular discussion that Pen 1, Pen 2, SDIC hasn't had those discussions. So I'm just a little, I'm feeling like I don't think I'm going to be able to vote today. If we're at, James, if you get to let's have a vote, I'm probably going to say I don't think I've had enough discussion, just because there's a lot of material here, you know, such as, you know, in the new IGA, we've struck some language. Has that been neutralized in the 5-year look back? So did you remove all permitted work from the prior 5-year look back? Because going forward, that's treated as a service request. So I don't know if that's been done. Easements, you know, what is a permit? So pulling a permit for an easement access, is that a service request? I mean, there's just a lot of granular discussions that haven't happened. I know this discussion has started back in May and June, but it was conceptual. We just got an amendment, a draft amendment, and I'm just having to react really fast on a significant pivot. And Jim, I understand this could be for a short-term gain, but I'm just worried about how fast we move through this discussion. And I can't speak for Ken or Annalise or Tanny. They may be very well ready to go. So, and again, SDIC, I'm just trying to see what's the advantage for us. You know, subsidy aside, you know, we've never asked for a subsidy. So that aside, what are we gaining? And if it's in the service levels, if it's in our cost per year, you know, I think SDIC would be paying more if the bills were presented, right? So we've never asked for that subsidy. I'm really kind of struck by, we've been subsidizing you. You haven't, you've been doing that graciously, and thank you, but it was never asked for. So
I hope that you don't believe we intended to imply that you asked for that. I think it's important for the boards to know. So I will own any impact of calling it a subsidy. And again, it is a combined policy decision that these boards have been making collectively for a long time. So again, no intent implied in that, but it is a reality.
Thanks, Jim. That's it for me, James.
Great, thank you, Tom. I appreciate your well-articulated concerns. Claudio.
Yeah, no, thanks everybody for the great conversation, and staff for trying to pull us through a pretty complicated issue. Just a couple of points, and actually some of them have been made, but you know, just out of the gate, I really want to emphasize that I'm very, very supportive of moving from a time materials basis to a cost allocation model, especially when you look back at the actuals. We're not talking about, you know, while we're talking about variances year to year, the general proportions are are very, very similar. So when I think about the difference, you know, around questions of rates, I don't imagine that we're talking about anything too material. And as somebody who's managed a lot of cost allocation models and been a stakeholder in a lot of cost allocation models, I don't have any concerns about the general principles. So really appreciate the idea of staff moving forward with this, because I know that it takes a lot to maintain a time and materials model. So if the juice ain't worth the squeeze, you really should be doing it more on an allocation basis. So appreciate that. You know, obviously we got to get the details right. Do want to appreciate the Tom's point about subsidy, though. You know, we've paid our bills over the years. You know, the cost recovery that's charged out to other districts. You know, that's based on the calculations done at MCDD. You know, we pay the bills based on what those cost pools and metrics yield. If there's a subsidy in there, it's because we need to tweak those models. I wouldn't want to call it a subsidy. You know, and I think Kathy said it in the chat. I want to emphasize it. You know, there's some concerns about knowing, you know, maybe not getting transparency and whether you're getting your money's worth. And the answer is, you know, a cost allocation model means that it's based, you know, we're really going to be paying based off of our expectation of service and service levels. And so we're going to be looking at outcomes and an appropriate prioritization of the utilization of staff time to accomplish the mission. And if we feel like that's not happening, we get, you know, we're board members, we should be talking yeah, we should be talking, Jim, don't make me laugh, man. But yeah, so I think that, you know, and I just want to come back to the fact that, you know, when I was looking deeper into the numbers, and thank you, Ben, by the way, for having an offline chat with me to help walk me through this, because, you know, this is a lot of complicated stuff. You know, our escalation over the next couple of years in Penn 1 is scheduled to be, you know, at a faster rate than anybody else's, because we've had a faster escalation over the last couple of years. That gave me a little heartburn in the beginning, and then I actually looked at the total dollar numbers impact and the fact that the arc ends in 2 years. You know, once you know, if this were something that we're going to be more than a 2-year term, we'd really want to make sure that we had a good stakeholder a governance structure for making sure that whatever's in that cost pool, we're all in agreement. Whatever that metric is, we're all in agreement. But given that what we've come up with is a metric that's going to yield pretty much historical costs, or at least you know, a historical escalation, you know, I feel really comfortable with it. And just finally, I was kind of reviewing, Jeff, I totally hear your concerns about Exhibit B, but I don't think actually Exhibit B, like I know that Exhibit B is updated on an annual basis, and while the update isn't in there, I don't think Exhibit B is relevant to the changes that we're talking about. And maybe staff can correct me on that, because Exhibit B is all about our hourly rates. So I just wanted to, you know, really, you know, I've spent a little bit of time looking into this, because I was originally very uncomfortable, and I wanted to kind of talk through sort of what I've bumped up against and gotten over to sort of see if that helps anybody else along.
Great, thank you, Claudio. Annalisa.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just going to end up saying like ditto to everything that Claudio just said. This is something that we at Metro absolutely support. I think it makes a lot of sense from a savings and efficiency perspective. Staff morale is something that is, I think, actually very, very important, and saving time and money as good government stewards of dollars is really important. So I would really encourage us to think about this and try to advance it. I also just want to reemphasize the point that I think I've heard a couple of times now, which is that this doesn't have to be set in stone. We are board members. We can come back and change this. If we have concerns or issues, we can raise them. I think this is really just about making a couple of changes that will really make a pretty big difference, I think, in MCDD staff's time and how they are utilizing it. And I think particularly in this moment when we are about to launch into a very new or continue launching into this new phase, their attention needs to be appropriately focused. So I would really recommend that we seriously consider this and, you know, talk about advancing it today.
Great, thank you, Annalisa. I know there's been comments from Kenzie and Val and Corky and I hope. Does everyone feel heard? Does anyone else want to comment on this? Just want to make sure we've gotten.
I would just say I am a little concerned. As I said at the beginning of this, I do think this is a good idea, and I think we can fix some of the issues and communicate more with some of you who have concerns. But it's more important to me to maintain the trust of all of you and to maintain a good feeling among these boards. I do think this is a good idea. I think you guys are raising some really interesting questions. And I think we can answer all of them. And at the end of the day, there's not a big change in the charges. However, again, it's not worth it if this creates conflict among the boards or leaves you feeling concerned. We've been getting by for since whenever the staffs were combined. I think it was in 1996 or so with the current program. So we can work with it. At the same time, I do hope that we can move forward with this, but if not, it's okay. And you guys are asking good questions, and I want you to hear that I appreciate them and don't want to push you in a direction you're not comfortable in, okay? At the same time, I hope you'll think about this carefully and help me help the staff. But again, okay if we don't do this, or if we have to hold off for some additional conversations.
Thank you, Jim.
That's a quick question, James. The slide in Ben's presentation today about what the fixed costs would be and what they were and how they came to them. I think it was his second slide with all the numbers. Is that have we seen that before? Was today the first day? And if today was the first day, can we just see that for reference? Because it would help me probably answer most of my questions. Because I think Val's concern is why did ours go up and everybody's went down? And I couldn't write the numbers fast enough and discovered I didn't write them correctly. So if we could get that slide, it would be helpful. Or it would be helpful for me.
Mary Helen, go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say, I think we can do that.
Well, thank you, folks. I want to make a quick recommendation or ask your opinion about this. I'm inclined to, normally the format is so helpful when we all need to come together, hear one thing, and then approve it across 4 boards. This may not be the case here. I know the Penn 1 board has been looking at this just because we had a concern, and so I know Claudio's a financial person for the city of Portland. Annalisa has looked at this pretty carefully and even taken it to the one of Metro's economists or financial planners. Jeff's obviously looked at it from a number of perspectives, including legal, and I know PJ has looked at it as well. So we may be a little further along than some of the other boards, but here's my thought. I'm willing to, from a process perspective, I'm willing to entertain a motion from any board that wants to take this to their board at this time. I think that's fair. If individual boards do not want to take it to a vote at this time, my recommendation is that to staff and the board president to determine how the concerns of individual board members for individual boards, what are the nature of those concerns? In other words, what 5 things do you need to know to say yes to this or to say no to it? And because I think to some of Tom's points, I think SDIC may have different questions than Penn 1 or Penn 2, but those questions need to be answered. So unless someone objects, I will take, I'd like to hear back whether or not that works for everyone to kind of communicate offline with staff to determine how you could bring this to a vote, and for staff to think about how that can be efficiently organized. And then if any of the boards want to make a proposal, a motion, I should say, today, we can entertain those motions. Does that sound okay?
And James, could I just ask a quick question? Is this, if one board votes no and the rest of us go forward with it, do you need unanimous, approval of this to make it work? Since this is kind of we're changing we're trying to streamline this, right? And so this is a new way of allocating costs. So if a board is not comfortable with it, does it not work? So that's just a clarification.
I should be cautious here and lean on Ben or Hong a little bit, but I think it would significantly reduce the value to the staff at a minimum. I think there's probably a way to do it, but I think it presents a lot of complexity that would be challenging to have a different cost allocation method for different clients of MCDD. I think that is going to be challenging at a number of levels. Lori or Ben?
I agree with that assessment. You know, if our main objective is to achieve efficiencies, if it's not uniform across the 3 districts, that efficiency is not gained.
So I get a sense that already what Tom has said is it's not comfortable to take a vote on. I'll let him weigh in, but for SDIC, and so if others aren't ready to vote, I'm not sure that I'm going to call MCV to vote on it until I know the others are on board.
Great, thank you, Ken. That's a good question. Tom?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this topic up, James. So Ken, Annalise, we should have a discussion when SDIC hears this, and I'm gonna hold this is today, and then we'll take it from there. We haven't had a discussion. Format is a dialogue, but until we have this item up for consideration, then we'll play it out. And Ken, a vote of 2 to 1 is fine. It will pass, right? So.
We did have several conversations individually with Tanny. I don't want to speak for him, but he is aware of the details of the proposal and certainly understands why staff is advancing it. But and his calculation to me via text yesterday was he thought that this would pass today. For whatever that's worth, I again don't want to speak for Tanny. That would be wrong on all kinds of levels. I do wonder if maybe we should kick this down for 1 more month to give those with questions time to answer, back to my desire not to create trouble, because I do think this is something that's worth doing, and it may not be worth doing if it leaves board members feeling concerned or uninformed about this. I'm not sure it's worth it.
Great. Mary Helen?
Just to my fellow board member, Penn 2 board members, we've not had a discussion about this. Have questions, Val has questions, and so if we can schedule a time just to alleviate those concerns. I'm all for cost efficiency, helping the staff do better things, and mine's brighter than I have made those statements in the chat room. I just would like to feel more comfortable with responses about individual questions that have been raised, and if we can do that, I think my vote would, because I'm kind of in the same boat that Tom is about, I don't know if I can vote when I don't know what I'm truly voting for. So
Thank you, Mary Helen. Claudia, I'm going to jump to Kenzie because I think she's been up before and I've missed her. Kenzie?
No, I went up and down a couple times. Just a tactical question. Is this something that needs to be voted on in a format setting, or could the individual boards separately meet to vote on this?
Either way would work.
Okay, thanks.
It just has to be duly noticed, and public meetings law needs to be followed.
Thank you, Kenzie. Thank you, Jim. Claudio?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I appreciate staff sort of coming up with this idea and bringing this forward. And Jim, I really appreciate your willingness to stand down in the name of maintaining trust. But I do want to encourage us to try and get to a good conclusion here, and even a little bit more time spent on it. I know time is money, Jim, and we don't want to spend too much more time on it. But for with my experience on these types of issues, if we're going to spend the next 3 years tracking time and materials, it's worth it, and it's worth a little bit more dialogue. So if it truly is the right way to go. So I really appreciate all the conversation here and all the work with staff and all the patience with us as we kind of noodle through what's a really wonky topic. So thank you.
James,
so let me
if I could, it's Jeff for a sec. Yeah, it's been a great discussion, and just for whatever it's worth, you can say nothing if you want, but my comments were not on the merits of this proposal. And to be very clear, the amendment expressly says that section 2.A of the agreement is going away. It's being deleted, okay? So what does that leave us? That leaves us with nothing, all right? So you look at the amendment and it talks in express terms about the attached Appendix B. My comment was solely, and this is for our district and all the other ones, I cannot in good faith vote on any resolution, whether it's about changing the color of the district office, if there is not an if it's not a full and complete document. Words, unfortunately, occupational hazard, words matter to me. And if it says it's attached and it's not, I'm not voting for it, regardless of the merits. So for what that's worth, apologize if I started a firestorm, but you know, it's just what I do.
Thank you for your diligence and well said. So I appreciate that a lot and respect it a lot. Let me summarize what I think I'm hearing from all of you. We have some individual board members who I think would benefit from some conversation with staff. So for those of you who have individual questions, would you please reach out to me via email and we'll set up a time to answer those questions. I think the next phase of this direction is that at your forthcoming individual board meetings, we should add this topic as an agenda item so that the individual boards can have an opportunity to talk about it. And then after those conversations, staff will have a better sense of whether we're ready to bring it back to the next format. How's that sound to everyone?
Or vote at that individual meeting, Jim, right?
That could be a possibility. I'm a little nervous about if I don't know where everybody's at, but we can think about that. And maybe after some individual conversations, I'll have a little better feel for what the potential outcomes would be. But again, I don't want to end up setting boards against each other or anything. It's, again, this is an interesting idea. I think we can make some efficiencies, but it's not worth tearing the boards apart. It's just not. Y'all, you're awesome people, and we need to maintain your trust, and you need to know what we're doing. And it's clear we have more work to do.
Great, thank you, folks. I think I'll close this agenda item by saying, this is both to board members, board presidents, and Jim and the staff is, we want to be mindful of public meeting law, and so however we can get comments from the boards to staff without having a discussion or a decision, it's not in the light of day. We need to just accomplish that. I have a pretty simple mind, and so and I want to approve this. I don't want to do it today, but I want to approve this. So in very simple terms, what would I need to know to do so? What's the missing information, and where are there any hangups to approving this? So let's try to get as soon as possible, what are your concerns? Try to articulate them in the next day or two, and then decide whether you just funnel those through your board president and onto staff or directly to staff. But please don't have an offline discussion that involves a quorum and the discussion gets pretty deep and moves toward a potential decision. So let's just.
My hope would be you'd send questions to staff, and we'll schedule a discussion for you all in an appropriately noticed meeting. Sorry, Wendy, if I stepped on your line there.
No, I was just saying the same thing. Don't copy your board chair. Send it directly to staff.
Yeah, and we'll answer individual questions, and we'll get moving on adding this item to your next agenda. But I do want to stress, if you as an individual board member have questions, please let me know, and we'll do our best to answer them so that you feel like you can cast the appropriate vote based on a thorough understanding of what's being proposed.
Great, thank you for the discussion. And I know people get concerned when we have conflict, but we make a lot of easy decisions that are easy decisions and are the right decisions. These types of decisions are equally important to the people we serve, and I think the process here is working. I appreciate everybody trying to be clear in your thoughts and respectful. I think we've maintained a high standard for what we're trying to do for the public today.
And I think cost allocation is one of the most contentious issues in public sector, probably in private sector too. I'm sure Erica and others have stories about it. And the other thing you need to know is that every cost allocation is wrong, just so you know. So that's how it is.
I have a question about that public records law. I don't understand why I can't copy Val on my question. I just can't copy all the board members because I would like Val to know what I'm asking, because it might be pertinent to his role as the board president. So I'm not clear on that statement about public records.
We're trying to avoid any deliberation among board members outside of a public.
Well, I wouldn't be. This would be informative. I want to know more. Val might want to know the questions that I have, and I personally really benefited from all the discussion here because people brought up points that I didn't know, and I was not knowledgeable. So if you have all these individual meetings and
well, we're going to have individual board meetings and a format meeting as well. So
okay.
again,
So
the purpose of the individual conversations is to answer individual board members' questions,
okay.
right? And then the policy conversation needs to happen in a publicly noticed meeting. That's the difference.
So very generally, public records law, we can't have a quorum in an email discussion, or I can't walk down the street and talk to Karen and invite Val over, and we discuss Pen 2 business.
Mary Helen, I can have Han follow up with you. There have been some recent legal decisions around public meeting laws related to sequential email conversations.
Okay, that'd be good because I'm not clear.
Express like extreme caution. So
no, I understand because I've run into on some city committees as well. But okay, thanks. If clarification would be good.
Great, thank you, folks. I want to do a quick agenda check. We are at almost 12:45, and some of the boards we're going to adjourn at 1. I think we all have until 1:30 reserved, although I know some people may need to drop off. I guess I look to you, Jim, and the staff to determine if we go ahead and engage in agenda item E. It will have obviously discussion and potentially a vote. Do we have time for that, or should we delay that and move through informational based presentations and see how far we get?
Just want to say that the 2 informational presentations are time sensitive.
Bill, can I get your read on the levels of service adoption for today? I know the real estate piece is important, but I'm loath to make this decision without consulting my awesome team.
Yeah, that's the board's discretion. Obviously, personally, I would prefer just to keep the ball rolling since we've already had discussion on this. But if there's a critical decision that the other 2 topics require the board to move forward, then yeah, we can defer.
Mark, what's the issue with the real estate presentation? I know we have some executive sessions scheduled. Is that a time-sensitive matter for today?
Well, I was hoping to provide a background so that those executive sessions would be sort of teed up. There is no known time sensitivity. I think the nature of the beast is talking about contingencies that could come up with regards to real estate. So I'm open to deferring, but we would need to find a time frame where all the boards could receive the information and then have an executive session to be able to speak openly about real estate privileged information.
I'm not sure what to do with that, Mr. Chair. I think it would be.
I'll make a suggestion to continue with the levels of service and Mark to incorporate your presentation into executive sessions in September.
That's my instinct.
Because we'll be adding board meetings in September based on previous conversation.
Okay, sounds great.
Great. Okay, we can do that. We will move to item E next. Just a quick question. I know we're losing, Pen 1 is losing 1 board member, or has lost 1 board member already. Just double check. I think PJ had to drop off. I know others may have a cutoff at 1 o'clock. So are all the boards free to go, or will all the boards have quorum until 1 or shortly thereafter in case we want to vote? Okay, getting a thumbs up, it looks like. Okay, let's jump into item E.
Thank you for that, and thank you everybody for your time. I know it's been a busy day, so I am going to try to speed through this. Fortunately, I don't really have anything new to present to the boards today. You've all been fairly well apprised of the situation of this project as we've gone along. You'll notice on page 27 of your board format is the same document provided at the last format meeting on July 21st, except it has 1 line added in the background, including that you were presented this information on July 21st. And that the boards at the time asked for additional information and an additional review period to look over the documents as proposed. We received comments back and talked very briefly to some of the board members. I just wanted to name that a lot of the comments that we received back were a couple fold and really informative and important, and none of them were a surprise to us as staff. So again, very, very brief recap. Levels of service help us to explain both internally and externally the services that we provide to our landowners. Typically, the strategic levels of service are outward facing there from the perspective of our customers, and technical levels of service are internal facing. So when we have a program to try to accomplish something that supports the delivery of those services, they know what it is that they're seeking to accomplish. Over the last several years, as we've worked on adopting best practices in asset management through strategic planning for MCDD, through the asset management policy that was adopted by all the boards, we've known that working on refining our levels of services has been highlighted in every one of those. What I'm trying to get at is a lot of the comments that we've gotten back are that it would be helpful if the levels of service stated were more outcome-based versus action-based. And we absolutely agree. We also had comment related to the need to develop levels of service for emergency response, for equity, for natural resources. We also agree. We think that I particularly think, especially that it's going to be really, really important for the urban district with its new mandates to not only look back at these levels of service and refine them further, but to also develop levels of service for all those new mandates. The goal of this specific project was to take really our first collective stab at writing levels of service. It's not something we'd really done as an organization before. So I want to recognize both as the project manager at this and our staff. We know that these are imperfect. We know that there's a lot of work to do. This was staff working together with the board's input and with other stakeholders' input to really learn how to do this, to figure out a framework to do it within, and to figure out how it's going to integrate into the work that we're doing and support our work. So we hear that what we have presented to you today is not the be-all end-all, and it's not comprehensive. Like I said, we still have emergency response to figure out. We may still have equity to figure out, though that's a bit challenging since the boards have different, MCDD has an equity policy. The status of that with other boards is in different places. And the urban district is obviously going to need to tackle that. So all of that is to say, your questions are really helpful in that they affirm to us that we feel like we're on the right track in developing these. We know that there's more work to do, and we hear that and we agree. And so what we're asking for the boards is to adopt to approve the resolution included in the packet. There is a resolution for each district drafted. I assume that was sent separately. I only see the MCDD one in the packet that I'm looking at. But that's probably, sorry, that's because I'm looking at the MCDD packet. But I guess what I really want everybody to know is there's still a lot of work to do. We're committed to doing that, and we feel as though getting through this round one is a great first step for us as an organization, and that it's likely going to be appropriate that these are refined, better defined, more time and resources and discussion, both with staff, with boards, and with our community can go into those revisions as the urban district comes more fully online. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity. And I really, really hope that we can leverage the experience the staff and the board members here have gained through this process to do an even better, more comprehensive job when that happens. I do actually have a hard stop for me at 1 o'clock, which gives me 8 minutes. Bill's also here to support, but I'd love to just open it up for any immediate urgent questions about what's been presented to you today. James, and then Nancy.
Super, thanks. Sorry for speaking first, but it was on my mind. For starters, thank you. I think this is where we want to be moving to. I hope I have a simple question. If we adopt these levels of service, including the technical levels of services, which are will be public information, if we don't have a current standard, if it's just TBD, does the organization have any liability for setting a level of service and not setting the metric in the worst case scenario if something happens? And I'm fine if the answer is no. I want to make sure that we're okay legally by setting service statements, technical levels of service, but we do not have to define what the metric is.
I appreciate that. I think it's a really important question. Again, we know this is a work in progress. Hong isn't here. I don't want to speak on her behalf, but Hong did review this resolution and this product pass it on. I also believe that Brian Sheets had the opportunity for SDSC to review this and make sure that he was comfortable with the legal sufficiencies of what was presented. So to the best of my understanding, our legal team is comfortable with us moving forward and recognizing that this isn't setting a thou now must go and do X, but that it is this is the general goal and direction of our organization. And as we mature in our sort of asset management process and learning, we're going to have opportunities to expand upon and better define these things and to work towards setting really clear targets in the future.
And Andrew, I know Brian Sheets is on the line, so I wonder if you can comment on, at least for SDIC, regarding James's comment.
Sorry, I didn't realize that, so.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, to the SDIC board, as far as this, I see this is a metric used to track performance. I mean, there is a potential that if there's a excuse me, if there's like a plaintiff out there that wants to make an assertion about not meeting levels of performance, I mean, it's possible that this is a metric that could be used for that. But to the extent I see that as a likelihood, I don't see that as a big risk. I see this as a metric tracking as well as aspirational goals on it. And I think that's what the intent is from the district.
Very much the intent from my perspective, leading the asset management program. So I appreciate that. And again, sorry for not recognizing that you're online.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Nancy, did you have a question or are you good? Okay, other discussion, other question from board members? Eric.
So with the service level agreement, one of the critical things I look for in any sort of contract that I would have with a computer organization, AWS, et cetera, is also how long does it take to restore service? And so one of the things I'd like you, this is probably a future improvement, but to think about that critical element of how long does it take to restore both the levy as well as the conveyance system. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, that's a great example of outcome-based service. Appreciate it.
Yeah, just sort of following on that and on the idea that this is first cut, and really appreciate you got to start somewhere, and we're going to keep on improving this. So really, thank you for all the work, and it's a big body of work. So just a quick question about what is the sort of anticipated cycle of review refinement? Just will we be seeing that on a regular basis? Is there a plan in place for regular updates, improvements.
So let me take a stab at that as Andrew transitions out. So in the resolution, there is a directive to have my position complete a state of assets report that will help fill in the far right column in the appendix that says current. So that would help determine what our current state is. As for updating this, it's up to your boards if you'd like us to start developing targets. The staff's initial inclination is to say this is a great baseline for the new urban districts to refine the levels of service based on these measures, targets, service statements, and current state of the assets. And so unless the boards have an interest in examining these again over the next 2 years, which we're happy to do, the intent is to pass this along to the new urban district where they'll refine it.
Great. Thank you, folks. If there are no more comments and questions, I think I want to ask the boards individually for motions. I'd like to start with MCDD since I think they've got their language here in the agenda. And Wendy, if it's possible, would you be able to paste the motion language with the specific resolution
The
number?
language is the same. I just put that in the chat.
Okay.
The resolution number is the same for each district.
It is. Great, thank you. Okay, in that case, let's go east to west again, SDIC.
Thanks, James. Opening up this item for discussion, do I have a motion?
I move to adopt resolution 2022-08-02, adopting the baseline levels of service.
And I'll second that.
You have a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to roll call vote. Annalise?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
And Tom votes aye. Motion passes 3-0.
Great, thank you, SDIC. MCDD.
Yes, can I get a motion?
Okay, I will move to adopt resolution 2022-08-02, adopting baseline levels of service.
All right, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Roll call vote. Corky?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Kenzie?
Aye.
Right, the motion passes unanimously. And Ken says aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Did you get Nikki?
Oh, Nikki, where are you on my screen? Sorry, Nikki. Sorry about that. All right, motion passes with extra, with Nikki's vote there as well.
Great, thank you, Ken. Thank you, MCDD. Pen 2.
This is Val Humble for Pen 2. Do I have a motion from a board member?
I move the adoption of resolution number 2022-08-02 to adopt baseline levels of service.
Thank you, Eric. Did I see a second from Karen?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote. Karen, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mary Helen?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Eric?
I vote aye.
Val Humble also votes aye. It's unanimous. It passes for Pen 2.
Great, thank you, Val. Thank you, Pen 2. I'm looking for a motion from the Pen 1 board.
This is Claudio. I'll move to adopt resolution 2022-08-02, adopting baseline levels of service.
This is Annalisa. I'll second that motion.
Great, thank you, Claudio. Thank you, Annalisa. Go ahead and do a roll call vote. Claudio Campuzano.
Great work from staff. Thanks so much. Aye.
Thank you, Claudio. Annalisa Kohler.
Aye.
This is James Allison. I vote aye. For the record, Jeff Noodleman and PJ Christopher have left the meeting. The motion passes.
Thank you all.
Thank you to the board members. Thank you to the staff. Again, I think some of the boards had planned, Penn 1 had planned it on dropping off at 1 o'clock. I apologize. I'm looking at the agenda. Should we have all boards adjourn, or?
No, we actually
are
have one more. Sorry, that's not super clear. We have one more presentation before you all leave.
Okay, no, that's okay. Thank you. Which is that the
That's that item G.
item G? Okay, for all. I got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, item G, the Natural Hazard Mitigation Program process status update with Carrie Sandeman.
It's actually going to be Matt Berlin, but I thought I'd take a minute to introduce him. Matt joined, so I'm Carrie Sandeman, I'm the MCPD Environmental Program Manager, and I also lead our planning department. And Matt Berlin joined us in early June. He is an emergency program planner and project manager, and has been taking, particularly as it relates to emergency management, the role that you may remember Brian Eberhardt often speaking to you from. So this is actually an agenda item that Brian spoke to you about nearly a year ago, and we're really appreciative for Matt picking it back up, and really just having settled into this role so well. So glad to have him here, and Matt, I will turn it over to you.
I hate to interrupt, but I can't understand or hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
It's
Carrie,
all
you were really
broken up.
garbled. Maybe Matt can just restate briefly what you said, because it was hard to hear you.
I agree.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So Carrie, thanks for the introduction. I think I understood because I knew what you were going to say, but my name's Matt Berlin. For those of you that I don't know, I'm the recently hired emergency planner for the drainage districts, and I'm coming in after the departure of Brian Eberhardt. And so Carrie was describing that Brian brought this work to you a year ago, and I'm picking that up now. And really, this is an informational opportunity just to give you a heads up that the plan, although it's had a minor delay, is from the county side. There are some steps coming up that we need your attention on. So I brought a few slides that I'd like to get through, and I will try to share my screen here so that we can get that set up. And I appreciate your patience today. So much good discussion. Let's see here. Can everybody see my slides? Yep, okay, yes. Great. So I wanted to tell you all a little bit about myself. For those of you I haven't met, so I started this role in June, and I've had a great time getting to know a lot of the programs that I'm going to be working on, a great time meeting the staff. I feel very lucky to be in this role. I'm an urban planner by training, and I've spent most of the last 20 years working with many of you in the Willamette and Columbia River basins on watershed management programs and stormwater programs. So I'm really excited to bring that background and experience to this work, and I look forward to meeting each of you and learning from you as we move forward. So today, we're here to talk about the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan that is being renewed by Multnomah County. And the last time you heard about this in this forum was over a year ago in July of 2021. On the county side, there's been a few delays that has required me to come back and sort of remind you about the work that we've done so far and provide an update on our involvement and our annexing into the county's natural hazard mitigation plan, what that means as far as outcomes, the process we've had so far, and the timeline we're looking at moving forward. And then to set up a return to this forum in October for a resolution or a motion to approve the plan. So again, no action is being asked of you today. This is really just an informational opportunity, and we will return back with a request for approval. And that approval is required by FEMA through the natural hazard mitigation process. So today is really a chance to remind you of the work and hear questions you might have or considerations you might want us to take before we come back in October. So just as an overview or as a reminder of the natural hazard mitigation planning process, what we're talking about is mitigation and reducing risks. And so thinking about risk from a natural hazard standpoint as a probability of something happening from a natural hazard standpoint, and then how severe the consequences of that probability would be. And so mitigation is about taking actions to avoid or minimize the level of risk, whether that be reducing the probability of a problem happening or the consequences of that problem happening. And to do that effectively, we really need to engage the public. We need to have a deep analysis of natural hazards and risk. And we need to be able to identify, prioritize, and develop mitigation strategies that do that work based on the scope, based on the activities and programs that we have and our capacity. So the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan allows us to do that. It's a FEMA approved planning tool that helps us analyze natural hazards like flooding or earthquakes to understand what risk they pose to an entity like ours and the community that it serves. And then it gives us a framework in which to develop these mitigation strategies that help us reduce community vulnerability to those risks. And then by knowing the risks and the actions that we can take, we can help create safer communities, we can save money, and we can improve our recovery efforts. So we are part of the City of Portland as well, and there are 2 plans in our area that are doing this work. The City of Portland has its own, and we advise the City of Portland on issues that relate to flooding. All other cities within the county will annex or have annexed to the county plan. And so while the City of Portland is a partner to the county, they chose to have their own plan, and the districts have provided input to their plan where these interests overlap. But we are proposing, as you heard last year, to annex into the county's multi-jurisdictional natural hazard mitigation plan. The existing plan started in 2017, and we are working right now on annexing into the 2022 to 2027 renewal of that plan. And there are a great deal of benefits for annexing. Essentially, when we are annexed into the plan, as opposed to just contributing to the greater plan by the county, we get to have a better understanding of our own risks based on our scope and based on our jurisdiction. It allows us to be proactive in mitigating high-risk hazards, and it allows us to better incorporate public input into our own priorities. And then the best and most important aspect of this is that we get an increased access to federal funding for local mitigation actions. So we come up with our own priorities, we have greater access to funding, and it allows us to be not only more flexible with how we incorporate our funding, but also more versatile. We don't have an obligation to address the actions that we propose. That will come down to you and the new district in deciding which actions we take on and how we pay for those, or how we apply for grant funding and how we take those on. So it allows us to adapt as we see fit as we go through the 5-year plan. And so we're not committed to the actions, but we are committing through this plan to manage the grant during the plan cycle and during the plan renewals. And so some of that means that we'll participate with the county steering committee. We'll consider public involvement as we maintain and update the plans. And if we need to provide amendments, we will have to come to the board and the boards and discuss those amendments. And how we take our prioritized and incorporated mitigation actions and move those into other plans. And then during the plan renewals, we'll need to spend time reporting on our progress, both the state and to the federal level, and highlight any changes in our priorities, and certainly acknowledge those changes as we move forward. And so we've done a lot of work with the county's natural hazard mitigation plan since its inception in 2017. There have been a couple of efforts to increase our involvement, and then one effort to annex it as well. But we're just now getting back into the swing of the process for the new renewal that will, the plan will expire in November of 2022. And so our efforts now are moving forward. Key steps in that planning process: last July, my predecessor, Brian Eberhard, came to you in this forum and requested from the drainage districts to appoint NCDD staff to represent them on the plan steering committee. And that was approved. And that involves a number of things, from attending meetings to developing the mitigation actions and collecting public involvement or public input and engaging the community. And then in the fall of last year, staff from MCDD began a survey through October of 2021 to gather public input on their priorities and what kind of actions they wanted to see. And it was a really effective survey. We received over 230 surveys from people who work and live and own property within the drainage districts. One major aspect of that was that we did both digital and mailed surveys based on feedback we received from the July 2021 format meeting, and it was effective. We received close to 40 online surveys and almost 200 mailed surveys. So it was a really important consideration, especially in the interest of equity, for digital or online access, that we provided those mail surveys. So I want to appreciate the staff that put those together and made that happen. There were some really some key themes that found their way from those surveys. Staff and partners worked to work through all of the comments and feedback we received. And some of those key themes that came out were recommendations for activities related to levee improvements, monitoring and maintenance. There were some concerns around the houseless activity and related impacts to the infrastructure integrity and maintenance needs. And then there was just a general request for more education and outreach related to flood risk and emergency preparedness. And so all of that leads to where we are now, where as the timeline picks up towards the expiration of the county's plan, is that in September, we expect the final contributions from the interjurisdictional partners to be compiled into a draft that will be released for public comment. And for us, that means that our work is now going to be moving towards the finish line and getting an adopted or approved plan from the federal government, so we can start working under that plan. And in that time for public comment, we have an opportunity, and you have an opportunity, to look at the material and provide feedback. And although it is a tight timeline, our county project manager is expecting that in October we'll incorporate that input into a final plan, and that plan will be submitted to the state Oregon Emergency Management Office by November 2022. So in order to do that, we want to get board's approval. And by the time it goes to the state and then to FEMA, we expect or hope that it will be approved by January 2023. And so our intent here is to give you a heads up that that's happening and to make sure you're aware of it. And coming up, we'll want to make sure that you have an opportunity, if you're interested, to read that document and provide comments on the draft. And that will be in September. It could be September and October. It's a timeline that I think is ambitious, but we're hoping that it gives enough time for people to comment. When we return, we hope to return at the October format meeting, and in that packet, we'll provide an executive summary of the plan development process, any findings or significant findings from the public review process, if we get a lot, and then any updates to the planning timeline, if there are any. And along with that, we'll have a request for approval or plan adoption. And so really the way I look at it as someone who just came into this role is that there was a lot of really great work done towards this effort, and then a bit of a lull as the jurisdictional agencies were getting their contributions together. And that's now coming to fruition, and we're getting ready to move towards that public draft. And so, again, as a courtesy, we want to give you an alert that this is coming, and we hope that you'll find interest in providing feedback to us. And so with that, I'll just invite any questions, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks again for your time.
Questions or comments from board members?
Your question in the chat?
We had a question for Tom, or from Tom Hansel. Will each district be annexing into the county's plan, or is it just one for all four?
My understanding is that we will all be annexing into the county's plan.
So each one of us probably has to vote on it.
I believe so, yeah. I think we're here to sort of try to get everybody at once because of the expedited timeline. And I do believe that we will need to get each approval. Yeah.
So I only have one question, and that is there's a previous NHMP that the county has, and I know there'll probably be changes. I don't know if they have a draft out yet, but if people wanted to preview it and get into some more of the details, they could maybe either look at the draft or the previous plan. And if that's true, if you could send us all the link, that would be great.
Right. I don't think there's certainly not a draft available for this document. And the draft formerly does not have us as an annexed entity, right? So the fact that the plan is expiring actually doesn't have a huge impact to us now. But in its new form, we will be more activated as an annexed plan.
And so if the 4 drainage districts accept this, does that carry over to the Urban Flood Safety Board, or do they have to agree or disagree to be a part of it? How does that work?
Sure. That's a good question. I'm going to ask for assistance in answering that, although I will say that my understanding is we would need to go to the Urban Board as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's correct. And then part of our work to maintain accreditation involves dealing with some of these emergency response and notification issues. So the Urban Board will need to act as well. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks, Matt, for the presentation. So the big impetus for pursuing the hazard mitigation plan is this opens the door for hazard mitigation grant funding, correct?
Correct. That's the primary benefit, yes.
What's the magnitude of those grant sources? Typical awards.
Oh, that's a good question. They're significant. The recent grant announcement, I think, was in many millions of dollars for Oregon projects. I don't have the specifics on that. I think the real power behind it is that we're unable to really apply for those independently. And so typically what's happened in the past is that when those dollars are available and we're applying within the county's plan, that our work can easily be under prioritized as other bigger problems are ranked higher. And in this case, as an annex, we allow a more independent view of the actions that we're proposing. So personally, I don't think about it as much as how much money. I think about it as how well positioned we are to receive those grant funds.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Matt. Tom, your question's a really good one because it helps give one example from where the city stands on this issue. I think in general, I think Matt's presentation describes the importance of looking at natural hazards, community assets, and then really prioritizing risks and developing good programs around that. I think everyone here is familiar with the state of the Penn 1 pump station, the PIR pump station. And the city is keeping that operational until we can build a new one. Because Penn 1 did not have a natural hazard mitigation plan, the district really couldn't apply for Office of Emergency Management and FEMA grant funds. So the city of Portland developed some match, and the city of Portland has an application pending to design the replacement for that pump station, and that's looking really good. and the city of Portland is happy to do that for now. But the arrangement is a little inefficient. So this does set us up in the future to take those prioritized projects in, across all districts, or ultimately in the one big district, and just access those funds so that we're maintaining the system at the highest level.
I just need to let the group know Annalise fell off, so it's just Ken and I for SDIC. We're out of quorum. Or we've adjourned.
Thank you, Tom. Let's see, we're getting close to time. Any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Okay, well, thank you, Matt. Thank you and welcome, Matt. We look forward to working with you. Great presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
We've got just a few minutes left. Wendy, I assume that we're adjourning. We're going to ask all the boards to adjourn at this time. Is that correct?
So I'm looking for our staff person that was going to give Pen 2 an update on the quit claim deed, but I'm not seeing them. So I'm not sure what happened there. I think you definitely have a memo in your packet, Pen 2 board members. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to staff.
Let us know. We're essentially trading some rights under an easement for better rights, and it's something that's been on the table for a long time, and it will improve our ability to maintain access to a location to operate and maintain our facilities. And the portion of the easement we're giving up is something that was created by a different agency that we don't need anymore. So we're getting a better deal as a result, and we're happy to tell you more about it at a Pen 2 meeting.
Sounds good to me, but we're down to just 3 board members at this point.
Okay.
Great. Well, in that case, let's go ahead and adjourn the board, starting with, I think Tom already adjourned SDIC. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the SDIC board members being here today. Ken, do you want to close out MCDD?
Certainly. Thanks for the rich discussion we had today. Appreciate it. I'm glad we took time for that, and further, we'll discuss that further in the individual board meetings. MCDD is now adjourned. Thanks all.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, MCDD. Val, Pen 2?
Yes, Pen 2 is now adjourned. Thanks for all being here.
Thank you, Val. Thank you, Pen 2. And Pen 1 is adjourned. Thank you to all the board members, the staff, the new board members, the new staff members. Stay cool, folks. Have a great day. You did good work.